Have you ever felt like you're trying so hard, yet still feel empty inside? You work harder, stay more disciplined, push yourself to become better every day, but when everything stops, when no one is watching, something still feels missing. If you're watching this video, chances are you're in that place right now. The truth is, the problem was never your lack of effort. The problem is that you're living without a strong internal code, something solid enough to keep you standing. Long ago in Japan, there was a path that true warriors followed, not to defeat others, but to never be defeated by themselves. They called it Bushido, the way of the warrior. This is not a set of dry rules, not theory. It is 8 virtues, that if you truly embody them, you become someone life cannot break. After this video, you will understand something important. It's not your skills, not your talent, but the small choices you make every day that define who you become. And if you're ready to change, comment yes or 1 below. That's how you begin. Today's story is about someone just like you. His name is Renji, a young warrior, talented, disciplined, almost perfect in the eyes of others. He kept winning. No one in the dojo could defeat him. People said he would become a legend, just like his father, a warrior who died with honor. But there was one thing no one knew. Renji knew. Every victory felt empty. Every compliment sounded distant. And whenever he was alone, he felt a deep void inside. Something nothing could fill. He had everything, but he lacked the one thing that truly mattered. Not strength, not skill, but an unbreakable foundation. And then, someone appeared. Not to teach him how to fight, but to teach him how to become a man. 8 trials, 8 moments where he had to choose between what is easy and what is right. 8 times where if he failed, he would remain a skilled warrior, but empty inside. But if he succeeded, he would become something very few people ever dare to become. A man who cannot be broken. And the question for you is, when it's your turn to choose, will you choose what is easy or what is right? Chapter 1. The Hollow Sword. Himeji Province. Late autumn. The training yard echoed with the sharp sound of wood striking wood. One by one, the students stepped forward, and one by one, they fell. Renji stood in the center, calm, controlled, untouched. 17 matches, 17 victories, not a single loss in 3 months. His movements were precise, his timing flawless, his breathing steady. Every strike landed exactly where it should. To everyone watching, he was the future of the dojo. The son of a legend, they whispered. He'll surpass his father. But Renji heard none of it, because deep inside, he knew the truth. Every time he won, something felt wrong. There was no satisfaction, no pride, no sense of meaning, just silence, a quiet, heavy emptiness that followed him after every match. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Renji sat alone by the edge of the training yard. The others celebrated, laughed, talked about their progress. He stared at his sword. What am I missing? He had done everything right. He trained harder than anyone, woke earlier, stayed longer, pushed himself further. So why did it feel like he was losing? At something he couldn't even name. Footsteps approached. Seventeen Vince. Renji looked up. An older man stood before him. Simple clothing, calm presence, eyes that felt deeper than anything Renji had seen before. You've mastered technique, the man said. Renji lowered his gaze. I still feel empty. The man nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting that answer. Of course you do. Renji frowned. What do you mean? You've learned how to defeat others, the man said softly, but you've never learned how to face yourself. The words landed heavier than any strike. Renji tightened his grip on the sword. I train every day. Yes, the man replied. But tell me, when you fight, where is your mind? Renji hesitated. He saw it clearly now, thinking about winning, thinking about how he looked, thinking about what others would say, thinking about not failing, everywhere, except the present moment. You're not fighting your opponent, the man continued. You're fighting 10 thoughts at once. Renji's breath slowed. Something inside him shifted. For 3 months, you've been winning battles, the man said, but you've been losing the war. Silence filled the space between them. The wind moved gently through the trees. So what am I missing? Renji asked. The man stepped closer. Foundation. Not strength, not skill. Foundation. A man without foundation, he said, will break, no matter how sharp his sword is. Renji looked at him, something new in his eyes. Not confidence, not fear, but curiosity. Who are you? He asked. The man turned slightly, already beginning to walk away. Someone your father trusted. He paused. And someone who's about to show you what it really means to become unbreakable. Chapter 2. The first virtue, rectitude. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Renji was already standing in the courtyard. The air was cold. Still, waiting. The man from the night before appeared without sound, as if he had always been there. Today, he said, you begin. Renji straightened. Begin what? The man stepped forward and placed a small leather pouch on the ground between them. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. There is gold inside, he said. Enough for a man to live comfortably for years. Renji looked down. What does this have to do with training? It belongs to a merchant, the man continued. He wronged your clan during a trade agreement, took advantage of your family's grief after your father's death. Renji's jaw tightened. So this is repayment? Yes. Renji reached toward the pouch. Then the man spoke again. There is something else you should know. Renji paused. The merchant did not act with malice, the man said calmly. It was a miscalculation, an honest mistake. Renji's hand froze in midair. He has a family, the man added. Children. This gold is everything they have. Silence. The weight of the pouch seemed heavier now. So, the man said, tell me, what is right? Renji didn't answer. Your clan expects you to take it, the man continued. To restore honor. Yes. But the truth tells you something different. Renji stared at the ground. Two paths, both with consequences. If you take it, the man said, you gain approval. You satisfy your clan. You avoid conflict. Renji could feel that pull. The easy path. But you destroy an innocent man. The words cut deeper than any blade. And if I refuse, Renji asked quietly, you stand alone. Renji closed his eyes. For the first time, there was no opponent to defeat, no technique to rely on, only a choice. Inside him, two voices fought. One said, do what is expected. The other said, do what is right. His breath slowed. He remembered his father, not the legend, but the man. A quiet memory surfaced. A warrior's strength, his father once said, is not in his sword, but in his ability to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Renji opened his eyes. The noise inside him disappeared. Clarity. He pushed the pouch back across the ground. Return it, he said. The man studied him carefully. You understand what this means? Yes. You may disappoint your clan. Yes. You may be seen as weak. Renji met his gaze. Then let them see what they want. The man was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. For the first time, he said, you did not choose comfort. He stepped closer. You chose truth. Renji felt something shift inside him. Not pride, not relief, but something stronger. A quiet alignment. This, the man said, is rectitude. Doing what is right, regardless of cost. He turned and began to walk away. 7 virtues remain. Renji stood alone in the courtyard. But for the first time, he didn't feel empty. Chapter 3. The second virtue, courage. 3 days passed in silence. No lessons, no explanations, only observation. Renji trained as usual, but something had changed. His movements were the same, yet his mind was quieter, more aware. On the 4th morning, the man returned. Come, he said. They walked beyond the dojo, past the familiar paths, into the mountains. The air grew thinner, the ground steeper, until they reached the edge, a cliff. Below them, a violent river crashed against jagged rocks. The sound alone made Renji's chest tighten. The man pointed downward. Do you see that ledge? About 10 meters below, a narrow outcrop barely wide enough to stand on. Renji nodded slowly. There is a stone on it, the man said. You will climb down, retrieve it, and come back up. Renji blinked. With what rope? The man held one up. Old, frayed, worn. Renji stared at it. This won't hold. Maybe it will, the man replied. And maybe it won't. Silence. Renji felt it immediately. Fear, not the kind he felt in training. This was different. Raw, heavy, real. This is unnecessary, his mind whispered. This is dangerous. You could die. He stepped back slightly. The man watched him. You've trained your body to move, he said. But your mind still waits for safety. Renji clenched his fists. This isn't training. This is risk. Yes, the man said. That's why it matters. He stepped closer. Courage is not something you practice in comfort. Renji looked over the edge again. His heart pounded. His palms were sweating. Every instinct screamed, "Don't do this." "What if the rope breaks?" Renji asked. "Then you fall." The answer was calm, simple. No reassurance, no comfort, only truth. Renji swallowed. Inside him, the same battle began. One voice said, "Wait until you feel ready." The other said, "You will never feel ready." He took a breath, then another. The fear didn't disappear. It stayed, loud, heavy, but something else appeared beside it. A decision. Renji grabbed the rope. His hands trembled as he secured it. "Fear is not your enemy," the man said quietly. "Paralysis is." Renji stepped to the edge. For a brief moment, everything slowed. The wind, the sound, his thoughts. Then, he stepped over. The rope tightened. His body jolted. Every muscle screamed. The drop below pulled at him like gravity had a voice. Halfway down, the rope creaked. A strand snapped. Renji froze. Panic surged. His grip tightened. His breath broke. "Move." The voice above cut through everything. "Not when you're ready. Now." Renji forced his body to respond. One hand, then the other. Pain, fear, noise, but he kept moving. He reached the ledge, grabbed the stone, and began climbing back. Faster now, focused, present, alive. When he reached the top, he collapsed onto the ground, chest heaving. The man looked down at him. "You felt fear," he said. Renji nodded. "But you moved anyway." Renji stared at the sky. For the first time, he understood. "Courage," the man said, "is not the absence of fear." He paused. "It is action in the presence of it." Renji tightened his grip on the stone. Inside him, something had changed again. This time, it felt like strength. Chapter 4. The third virtue. Compassion. A week later, the village was restless. Whispers spread through the streets like wind before a storm. 3 men had been captured. Thieves. They had stolen rice from the granary. The punishment was clear. Execution at dawn. Renji stood among the crowd, watching as the prisoners were dragged into a small wooden cell. They didn't look like warriors. They looked tired, thin, desperate. One of them couldn't have been older than 16. That night, the man found Renji again. "Come," he said. They walked to the prison. Inside, the 3 men sat in silence. No anger, no resistance, only fear. Renji studied them carefully. "These are the criminals?" he asked. The man nodded. "They broke the law." Renji crossed his arms. "Then the punishment is justified." The man said nothing for a moment. Then he stepped closer to the cell. "Why did you steal?" he asked. One of the men looked up. "To eat." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Our crops failed. My children haven't eaten in 2 days." Another spoke. "My mother is sick. I had no choice." The youngest said nothing. He just stared at the ground, shaking. Renji felt something shift in his chest. "This changes nothing," he said, though his voice was quieter now. "The law is the law." The man turned to him. "And justice?" Renji hesitated. "They chose to steal." "Yes," the man said, "but did they choose their suffering?" Silence. Renji looked at the boy again. He imagined himself in that position, hungry, helpless, forced into a decision between breaking the law or watching someone he loved suffer. "What would you have done?" the man asked. Renji didn't answer, because now he didn't know. The certainty he once had was gone. "The law exists to maintain order," the man said, "but compassion exists to protect humanity." Renji's breath slowed. "These men will die in the morning," the man continued. "You cannot change the law." Renji looked up. "Then why show me this?" The man met his eyes. "Because you can choose whether you remain silent." The words lingered, heavy, unavoidable. That night, Renji didn't sleep. At dawn, the village gathered. The prisoners were brought forward. The executioner stepped into place. Renji felt his heart pounding. This was not a battle of strength. This was something else, something harder. If he spoke, he would challenge authority, risk judgment, appear weak. If he stayed silent, 3 lives would end. The blade was raised. "Wait." The word came out before he could stop it. All eyes turned. Renji stepped forward. "They broke the law," he said, "but they are not criminals." Murmurs spread through the crowd. "They acted out of desperation," he continued. "Punish the act if you must, but do not destroy their lives." Silence, tension, judgment. Then, the decision was made. Banishment, not death. The ropes were cut. The men collapsed in relief. The youngest looked at Renji, tears in his eyes. No words, just gratitude. Later, the man stood beside him. "You felt their suffering," he said. Renji nodded slowly. "And you acted." The man looked toward the horizon. "Compassion is not weakness." He paused. "It is strength that chooses to protect, not destroy." Renji stood in silence. Inside him, something softened, but at the same time, something became stronger than ever before. Chapter 5. The Trial of Character. The lessons did not stop. They became quieter, less obvious, harder to recognize. There were no more dramatic tests, no cliffs, no life or death decisions, only moments, small ones, easy to ignore. That's where the real training began. It started with a man, old, dirty, clothes worn thin from years of labor. A farmer. He stood at the edge of the training yard, hesitant. "I want to learn," he said. The other students laughed. "A peasant? With a sword? Know your place." Renji said nothing. He looked at the man, saw the tired hands, the quiet dignity, then he bowed, the same way he would bow to a master. "I will teach you." The laughter stopped. Whispers spread. "He's lost his mind." Respect for a peasant? But Renji ignored them. He showed the man a simple defensive movement. Slowly, patiently, correcting him without judgment, as if it mattered, because it did. When the lesson ended, the man bowed deeply. "Thank you," he said. Renji bowed back, not out of obligation, but choice. That day, he understood respect is not given based on status. It is given based on who you choose to be. Weeks later, another test came. Les visible, more dangerous. His uncle asked him a question. "How prepared are we for war?" Renji knew the truth. They weren't ready. Training had softened, discipline had faded, but speaking that truth would create tension, embarrassment, possibly anger. He could lie, say what was expected, protect the image, protect himself. For a moment, he considered it. Then he spoke. "We are not ready." Silence filled the room. Eyes turned. His uncle's expression hardened, then softened. "Explain." Renji did. Clearly, honestly, no exaggeration, no fear. When he finished, the room was still. Then his uncle nodded. "Good." Later, the man found him again. "Truth," he said, "is easy when it costs nothing." He stepped closer. "But honesty is choosing truth when it costs everything." Renji felt that deeply. The final test came without warning. A rival approached him in public. "You've changed," the man said. "Too soft." The crowd watched, waiting. "You defend peasants. You question authority." He stepped closer. "You're weak." Renji felt it. The tension, the pull to react, to prove himself, to fight, to restore his image. Just one duel, and everything would be settled. His hand moved slightly toward his sword, then stopped. He looked at the man, calm, still. "Your words," Renji said quietly, "do not define me." The rival smirked. "So you refuse?" Renji met his eyes. "I simply don't need to prove anything to you." The crowd murmured, confused, divided. But Renji felt something different, unshaken. For the first time, his sense of self didn't move with their opinions. The man appeared beside him once more. Respect, honesty, honor. He nodded. "You are beginning to understand." Renji looked forward, not at the crowd, not at the rival, but beyond. And for the first time, who he was did not depend on who was watching. Chapter 6. The seventh virtue, loyalty. The shift came suddenly, not as a test, but as a crisis. One morning, the dojo was silent. No training, no laughter, no movement, only whispers. Renji arrived to find the courtyard empty, and the air heavy. Something was wrong. He found the man standing near the entrance. "What happened?" Renji asked. The man looked at him. "Your clan has been accused of treason." The words didn't make sense at first. "Treason?" "A political move," the man said. "False, but dangerous." Renji felt his chest tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means," the man replied, "that if the accusation stands, your uncle will be executed." Silence. "And the rest of the clan?" The man didn't answer immediately. Then, destroyed. The word landed like a blow. Renji stood still, processing. "This is the seventh virtue," the man said. "Loyalty." Renji looked at him. "This isn't a lesson." "No," the man said quietly. "This is real." By midday, the effect had begun. One by one, the samurai started leaving. Quietly, no announcements, no goodbyes, just absence. I have family to protect. I must return home. I will come back when this is resolved. Excuse. Wrapped in fear, Renji watched them go. Men he had trained with, fought beside, respected, leaving. Choosing safety, choosing survival, over loyalty. The man stood beside him. You could leave too. Renji said nothing. No one would blame you. The man continued. You're young. This is not your burden. Renji's jaw tightened. If you stay, the man said, you risk everything. Renji looked out at the empty training yard, the place that had shaped him, the place his father had built. Your father faced this moment, the man added. Renji turned. He had the chance to walk away. A pause. He didn't. The wind moved through the courtyard. Quiet. Cold. Inside Renji, there was no confusion this time, no internal battle, only clarity. I stay, he said. The man watched him carefully. Even if it costs your life? Renji met his gaze. Especially if it costs my life. Silence. Not heavy, not uncertain, but solid, unbreakable. Days passed. Tension grew. The accusations spread. Fear tightened its grip, but Renji remained, not loudly, not for recognition, just present, steady. Others noticed. Not many, but enough. A few returned, then a few more, not because they were fearless, but because someone had chosen to stand, and it gave them the courage to do the same. The man spoke again. This is loyalty, he said. Not to comfort, not to outcome. He stepped closer. But to your word. Renji looked forward. If everything falls, he said quietly, then I fall with it. The man nodded. For the first time, he said, you understand. Renji stood in silence, not hoping for survival, not fearing death, only grounded in one truth. He would not move, no matter what came, and in that stillness, he discovered something stronger than fear, something stronger than doubt, something that could not be taken away. Commitment. Chapter 7. The final virtue. Self-control. The storm had passed. The accusations were proven false. The clan survived. Life began to return to normal. Training resumed. Voices filled the courtyard again. But something had changed. Not outside, inside Renji. He was no longer reacting. No longer chasing. No longer proving. He simply stood. And that is when the final test came. Not through crisis, but through provocation. The rival returned. The same man who had once called him weak. This time, he didn't whisper. He stepped into the center of the courtyard. In front of everyone, he said loudly, I challenge you. The crowd turned instantly. Silence spread. Renji looked up slowly. To a duel, the man continued. Real blades. No rules. A ripple moved through the dojo. This was no longer insult. This was a direct strike at his honor. You've avoided this long enough, the rival said. Or are you afraid? Renji stood, walked forward, stopped a few steps away. He could feel it. The tension, the eyes watching, waiting, judging. This was the moment, the perfect opportunity. To prove everything, to silence doubt, to reclaim status, to show strength. His hand moved toward his sword. The rival smiled. He thought he had already won, because this was predictable. Push, provoke, control. Renji's fingers touched the hilt, then stopped. The noise inside him didn't rise. It didn't explode. It didn't take over. It simply passed. Like a wave that refused to break, he let his hand fall. The smile on the rival's face faded. What are you doing? He snapped. Renji looked at him, calm, unmoved. You want this fight, Renji said. Yes. Why? The rival frowned. To prove who is stronger. Renji nodded slightly. And if you win? Silence. The rival hesitated. For honor. Renji stepped closer. Honor doesn't come from winning, he said quietly. It comes from who you are, when no one is watching. The crowd shifted. Something changed in the air. You insult me, the rival said, voice tightening. And you expect me to walk away? Renji held his gaze. No. A pause. I expect myself not to be controlled by you. The words landed harder than any strike. The rival's anger flared. Coward. Renji didn't react, didn't defend, didn't explain, because for the first time, he didn't need to. I have nothing to prove, he said, and nothing to gain. The rival's hand tightened around his sword, but something stopped him. Not fear, not doubt, something else. Renji turned, walked away. No rush, no hesitation. The crowd watched in silence, confused, divided, but one thing was clear. This was not weakness. This was control. The man appeared beside him once more. The hardest battle, he said, is never against others. Renji nodded. It's against yourself. The man smiled slightly. And today, he paused. You didn't just win. Renji looked forward. He already knew. You were free. Chapter 8. The Transformation. Winter passed. Then spring came quietly. Nothing dramatic happened. No battles, no tests, no moments that demanded everything. And yet, everything had changed. Renji still woke before sunrise, still trained, still walked the same paths, spoke to the same people, lived in the same world, but he was no longer the same man. Before, every action felt like effort, like something he had to remember, something he had to force. Do the right thing, control yourself, stay disciplined. Now, it was simply who he was. There was no hesitation when facing a difficult choice. No internal argument, no noise. When something was right, he moved. When something was wrong, he didn't. Simple, natural, unforced. One morning, a dispute broke out in the village. Two men arguing over land, voices raised, tension building, people gathering. Renji arrived as the situation escalated. In the past, he would have stepped in with authority, tried to control the outcome, impose la solution. Now, he listened, quietly, fully present. One man spoke of ownership, the other spoke of survival. Both were right, both were suffering. Renji didn't rush, didn't react. He asked one question: what outcome leaves both of you able to stand tomorrow? Silence followed. Then, something shifted, not because he forced it, but because he created space. And in that space, clarity appeared. The argument softened, not perfectly resolved, but enough to prevent damage, enough to move forward. Renji stepped back. He didn't need credit, didn't need recognition. The moment had passed, and so had he. Later, the man stood beside him again, watching. You didn't solve their problem, he said. Renji nodded. I didn't need to. The man smiled faintly. You're beginning to understand. Renji looked toward the horizon. I don't feel like I'm practicing anymore. The man turned to him. Because you're not. A pause. You're becoming. The words settled. Deep, quiet, permanent. The 8 virtues were no longer separate, no longer things he tried to remember. They moved together, as one. Rectitude guided his choices. Courage carried his actions. Compassion softened his strength. Respect shaped his behavior. Honesty grounded his words. Honor anchored his identity. Loyalty held him steady. And self-control kept it all aligned. Renji stood alone in the training yard that evening. The same place where it all began. The same place where he once felt empty. He closed his eyes. There was no void now. No noise. No need. Just presence. Still, complete. For the first time in his life, he wasn't trying to become someone. He already was. And nothing outside of him could take that away. Chapter 9. The student becomes the teacher. A year had passed. The seasons had turned. And so had Renji. Word spread quietly, not about his victories, not about his skill, but about something harder to describe. Stability, presence, an unshakable calm that others could feel. Even before he spoke, people began to notice, and eventually, they began to come. One afternoon, as the sun hung low over the training yard, a young man stood at the entrance, 17, maybe 18, sharp stance, focused eyes, but something familiar, restless, unsettled. Renji saw it immediately, a reflection. The young man stepped forward and bowed. I've heard about you, he said. Renji nodded slightly. What have you heard? That you can't be shaken. Renji gave a faint smile. That's not something you hear. The young man hesitated, then spoke more honestly. I've trained for years, he said. I've improved. I win. I do everything I'm supposed to. He paused, but it still feels like something is missing. Silence. Renji looked at him carefully, not judging, not analyzing, just seeing. What is your name? He asked. Kaito. Renji nodded. Kaito. When you train, what are you trying to become? Kaito answered quickly. Stronger, faster, better. Renji shook his head gently. That's what you're doing. A pause. But that's not who you're becoming. Kaito frowned. I don't understand. Renji stepped closer. Strength without foundation collapses. He let the words settle. You've been building skills, Renji continued, but you haven't built yourself. Kaito looked down. Something in him recognized the truth, even if he couldn't fully explain it. Then teach me, he said. Renji was silent for a moment. Then he turned. walked toward the edge of the training yard. Kaito followed. "Do you see this place?" Renji asked. "Yes. This is where I won 17 matches." Kaito's eyes widened slightly. "You?" Renji nodded. "And this is where I felt the most empty." Kaito looked confused. "How is that possible?" Renji looked at him. "Because winning doesn't fill what's missing inside you." Silence. The same silence Renji had once faced. "So how do I fix it?" Kaito asked. Renji didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a wooden training sword, held it out. "Show me your best strike." Kaito stepped forward, confident, focused. He attacked. Fast. Clean. Technically perfect. Renji blocked it effortlessly, then stepped back. Again, Kaito attacked. Again and again. Each time, precise. Each time, predictable. Finally, Renji raised his hand. "Stop." Kaito lowered his sword, breathing slightly heavier now. "What's wrong?" he asked. Renji looked at him calmly. "Nothing." A pause. "And everything." Kaito frowned. "You're not here," Renji said. "I am." "No," Renji replied softly. "You're thinking about being good." Kaito froze. The same realization, the same moment, the same fracture. Renji stepped closer. "The path you're looking for cannot be given to you." He placed the wooden sword back into Kaito's hands. "It must be walked." Kaito looked at him, then nodded slowly. "What do I do first?" Renji met his eyes. And for a moment, it wasn't Renji speaking. Not fully, it was the path itself. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin with the first virtue." A pause. "The hardest one." Kaito took a breath. "What is it?" Renji turned slightly. "Doing what is right." He looked back at him. "When everything in you wants to do what is easy." Final part. The code that cannot be broken. The story doesn't end with Renji. Because this was never just his story. It's yours. Renji didn't become unbreakable in a single moment. There was no sudden transformation, no instant enlightenment. It happened quietly, in choices no one saw, in moments no one applauded, in decisions where doing the right thing cost him something. That is the truth most people avoid. You don't become strong by doing what's easy. You become unbreakable by choosing what's right when it's hardest. Renji learned this through 8 virtues, not as ideas, but as identity. Rectitude, the courage to choose what is right, even when it costs you approval. Courage, the ability to move forward, even when fear is screaming at you to stop. Compassion, the strength to protect, even when the world tells you to punish. Respect, treating every person with dignity, not because they earned it, but because you chose it. Honesty, speaking the truth, even when silence would be safer. Honor, standing firm in who you are, regardless of what others say. Loyalty, remaining when everyone else walks away. And self-control, the final mastery, the ability to control the only thing that truly matters, yourself. These are not habits, they are not temporary actions, they are foundations. And when your life is built on them, nothing can shake you, because your strength no longer comes from outcomes. It comes from who you are. So here's the question, not for Renji, for you. Where in your life are you choosing what is easy instead of what is right? Maybe it's something small, a decision you've been avoiding, a truth you haven't said, a standard you've lowered. Start there, not with something big, not with something dramatic. Start with one choice. Tomorrow, choose one thing, just one, where you know what is right, and do it anyway. That's how it begins, not with motivation, not with inspiration, but with action. If you're ready to stop living scattered and start building something solid inside you, comment, "I choose," because the moment you choose is the moment everything starts to change. And remember, lựa chọn là quyền của bạn, but only action creates results. So choose carefully, act intentionally, and become someone that nothing in this world can break. I'll see you in the next path, warrior.